and welcome to Viewpoint on Ukraine today. The war in eastern Ukraine with combined Russian separatist forces has prompted the government to overhaul its military after years of neglect. But is the inefficiency and corruption which has plagued the defense sector for years still a problem today? And what is the government doing to eradicate this? To answer this and more, we're joined by Ihor Dolgov, Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister for European Integration. Welcome to Viewpoint. I understand, so corruption and inefficiency, are these one of the main reasons why the West has been reluctant to provide lethal aid?
Well, it's not about corruption. The first priority and the first thing was to stop aggression. We started to fight in eastern Ukraine. And you should understand that the situation is completely different. Corruption, this is something which is a problem in all Ukraine. And the defense sector is not an exclusion in this regard. But what we're trying to do with assistance by the way of NATO, to eradicate corruption, and the main tool to do so is transparency. Everything what is possible now is public. You can open defense minister's website and check what kind of purchases are going on. You can bid, you can compete, and everything is transparent. And I must tell you that also one of the effects of the Russian aggression against Ukraine was a consolidation of Ukrainian people. And now society control very carefully what we are doing in defense and in the armed forces of Ukraine.
I see. So civil society has played a key role in checking what the defense sector is up to. But
important role.
Important role, a key role. I have a few quotes from a somebody in the defense ministry who said that before, a few years before, and in the past, officers auctioned off defense ministry land and even used military equipment and personnel to build their own houses. And this seems like the type of corruption that would make the West a little bit hesitant to give the kind of support that Ukraine even needs right now. So how will the West get its reassurance that these kind of schemes are being tackled?
Well, you know, it's important, of course, what the view and vision of the West. But for us, for Ukrainians ourselves, it's much more important than for outsiders. And I don't believe that such kind of things continue to exist in Ukrainian army. Just visit the eastern Ukraine. Just visit Ukrainian units on the front line. Just, of course, I can imagine that having a huge heritage from the Soviet times, big, tremendous plots of lands, it would be possible that some misuses in the past took place. And it is also important to understand that it is not possible, due to the legislation, just to sell a piece of land which is the property of the Ministry of Defense. So there are many rumors, and there were only a few cases which were in the court, and that's it. So let's talk about defense, and let's talk about strengthening Ukrainian defense capability. One of the best and the most efficient tools is, again, as I mentioned already, transparency and public control.
And is the defense ministry willing to make the defense budget public and open to civil society?
Well, it is public. It is already public. And, of course, Ukrainian government, since it was for the first time that in the year 2015, defense forces and the Ministry of Defense received significant, substantial resources, not only to stop aggression, but also to develop Ukrainian armed forces. Probably you took note that Ukrainian army almost doubled in size. Before the aggression, we had 140,000 troops. Now we have more than 250 combat-ready troops. So we need to first arm our people. We need to train them. We need to support army logistically, and we need to supply army with weapons and instruments to fight. So, and of course, in this respect, budget is public. And again, for the next year, we expect that government will be in a position to allocate significant and substantial money, which is now are regulated by the National Security Council, and total defense expenses are to be not less than 5% of the GDP. And that's a big amount.
But for example, to oversee the defense budget spending, for example, Poland has a bureau, an anti-corruption bureau, which specifically monitors what the defense sector is up to and reports directly to the minister. Now, does Ukraine plan to have something like this to oversee?
Yes, of course. You mentioned at the beginning that participation of Ukraine in NATO programs. One of the most important programs is called Building Integrity. That's about transparency and fighting corruption. And of course, we established a unit, an audit unit, within the Ministry of Defense. And the head of this unit is a lady who was trained, by the way, in the Great Britain. And she graduated from this program, Fighting Corruption. So we have a bureau which reports to the minister, and NATO evaluate the activities of this office as a very efficient.
When did this bureau, when was it established?
Well, to my knowledge, it's more than 2 years already.
More than 2 years, okay.
Yes.
Let's move on. What about Ukraine's weapons sector? As I understand, NATO has recently published a report where it stated that Ukraine is one of the top 20 exporters, weapons exporters in the world. Now, Ukraine does not, the Ukrainian parliament cannot control weapons procurement. It doesn't have a system yet. Does the Ministry of Defense plan to establish some kind of system or give power to the parliament to control weapons procurement? Because this would potentially mean that Ukraine has no control over illegal weapons trafficking.
No, that is not correct, because Parliament has all necessary tools to control spendings. And by the way, Ukrainian...
But NATO has published this report where it specifically says the Ukrainian Parliament cannot control weapons procurement.
That's strange.
Okay.
Look, we have a well-developed system of export control. This system of Ukrainian export control was established with the assistance of the government of the United States, according to best standards, existing standards. And Ukrainian arms export is being strictly controlled and monitored by all existing export control systems. Yes, you are right that we are on the top list of exporters of arms. Yes, we are very good in some specific areas, as battle tanks building, or armored vehicles, or airlift, and other capabilities. And it's important for us to continue to produce arms for Ukrainian armed forces. We have to supply our own army, and we have to keep, again, the good relations with possible buyers of Ukrainian arms. This is needed to develop Ukrainian defense industry. And we look forward to closer cooperation with NATO. By the way, today in Brussels, we will sign a roadmap on military-industrial cooperation between NATO and Ukraine. It's a significant part of daily activities, and arms are being controlled within the ministry, and it is also controlled by the government. I don't know why there is an impression that Parliament has no sufficient tools.
Well, according to NATO, Ukraine loses 15% of its resources as a result that there's no oversight over weapons procurement. This is according to a NATO report.
Again, well, we must check again, and the Ukrainian public should know about expenditures and public finance. And Ministry of Defense, as a governmental office, has to act in a transparent way, and that is what we are trying to do. I don't know why NATO's experts evaluate the losses as very high, 15%. I cannot
15%
imagine.
is a very high number, especially if there's some miscommunication between NATO and Ukrainian officials. Surely they would figure this out.
We are very open. Maybe it's important, again, to note that we have now more than 10 advisors from NATO member states working permanently in the MOD. They not only advise and consult, but also have an access to the information, including about expenditures. And for me, it's a bit strange to that you quote reports. Maybe I will check again. But
yes, this is a report by the NATO's Building Integrity Program, which
that's
they've
what
published.
I mentioned.
Yes.
Building integrity. It's
Yes.
about fighting corruption.
For this year, and they listed that 3 NATO partner states are one of the top 20 arms exporters in the world, and as well as Ukraine. And none of the parliaments have any authority over weapons procurement except Sweden. Sweden does have it, and it's one of the top arms exporters. So it seems a bit strange to me that the Ministry of Defense does not quite know what this report is about when NATO seems to have published it.
Well, we know many different things, and we cooperate with NATO very closely. I can imagine that you quoted the report, which also mentioned Sweden, the best practice example. Maybe we are not perfect, but we are trying to improve our performance.
So does the Ukrainian parliament have oversight over weapons procurement, according to the Ministry of Defense?
What Ukrainian parliament is expected to do is to adopt budget, including defense budget. And we have a committee on national security and defense within the parliament. And just 2 weeks ago, 3 committees of the parliament invited leaders and deputies of Minister of Defense to the parliament to discuss relations between Ukraine and NATO. And of course, members of parliament, they have a right to request any information from the MOD, and we have to reply, to answer those questions within a very limited period of time. And these answers are to be straight to the point. So I cannot agree that there is no control or tools or instruments to control any expenditures of the defense ministry.
So still some things to be worked out, I'm sure. Thank you for coming in today into our studio.
Thank you.
This has been Mr. Ihor Dolgov. He is the Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister for European Integration. You've been watching Viewpoint on Ukraine Today.